All right, so in this lecture, we're going to review density, and we've been talking about how chemists describe matter, and we're going to be looking at density as a physical property. And remember that physical properties are properties of matter that you can observe and or measure without changing a substance's identity. All right, so density is defined as how much matter is packed into a certain volume. So something that's high density, like this picture here on the left, notice it's got very little space in between its atoms. They're really tightly packed. So a lot of matter in a tiny space. This picture here on the right, with the substance that has a low density, notice there's a lot more space in between the particles. Might take up the same space, or the same volume as the high density material, but because there's more space in between the particles, it's going to be less dense. Okay, so when you were little, you might have made a density column like this one. Materials are going to layer in a column based on differences in density. So things that are at the most dense are found at the bottom, and things that are the least dense are found at the top. So it looks like what these people did here was they color-coded the different substances. So I see clear, I see some candy corn, I see some red, I see blue, I see purple, I see a different purple liquid. So all of these liquids have different densities. And the substance that is most dense is right here. And the substance that is least dense is at the top. All right, so how to measure and calculate density. The first step is to measure mass on an electronic balance. And that will be in grams. Okay. The second step is to find volume. And there's several different approaches to finding volume, which we'll be talking about on the next slide. And then the third step is to calculate density. And again, we'll do some more detailed work about calculating density in a few minutes. So I want to give you a few more details on finding the volume of a substance. We'll be talking about finding the volume of a liquid or finding the volume of a solid. Okay, so if a substance is a liquid, you're going to use volumetric glassware, like a graduated cylinder. Okay, and you'll record the measurements in milliliters. Okay. If you have a solid, you can have two things that could happen. If the solid has a regular shape, you're going to measure its dimensions with a metric ruler. You're going to record those measurements in centimeters. That's important to take note of. And you'll calculate volume with a geometric formula like length times width times height. But remember that regular shapes, we have more than just rectangular prisms and cubes, so it's possible that you might have to use a different formula. If a solid has irregular shape, you're going to use displacement in a liquid that's less dense than that. We'll review the process of water displacement in class. Or actually, I don't want to say water displacement. We'll be reviewing how to do this in class. Okay. So you might have seen this triangle approach to solving problems before. I use this a lot because it avoids you having to memorize formulas. And for those of you who have, again, that fear that I'm going to make you memorize a bunch of stuff this year, I'm not going to. I will always provide you with formulas to use on tests and quizzes. Your job is to know how to use the formulas to solve problems. So the way these triangles work is you cover up the variable that is being asked about in the question. So say, for example, something is asking you to find density. You would cover up density in the triangle, and you're left with the formula. Okay, but we'll look at a problem example doing that in a couple of minutes. A couple of things I want you to add to this. So the way the triangle is set up, this would be mass divided by whatever is in the denominator, if it's on the same level in the triangle, it is multiplied. Okay, so just make sure you do add those two things. Okay, so now I'm going to go through a few problem examples, and pretty much since there's three, you can expect that you're going to have to use the density triangle probably in 3 different forms. So I'm going to pop the triangle up here. I'm not going to put as much as what was in the one that I just gave you, but mass, volume, and density. All right, so to solve this problem, it says what is the volume? So I'm looking for V of a tank that can hold 18,754. So there's my mass. Grams of methanol, whose density is 0.788 grams per cubic centimeter. There's my D. Okay, so I'm looking for volume. So I'm going to cover that up in the triangle, and that leaves me with the formula. So the first thing I want you to write down when you're solving problems for me is what formula are you using to solve the problem? So I want to make sure that you give me the formula. Okay. The next thing that you need to do is make sure that things are in the right units. We haven't covered metric conversions yet, so you're fine with things will be in the right units. Okay. Second thing to do is to substitute into the formula. So mass is 1,754, and the density is 0.788. Okay. The next thing I'm looking for is the answer to the problem, and the answer to this problem is 14778.15, and you want to make sure that you include units, and it would be centimeters cubed, and by the way, that is a 5. Okay, so the answer is 14778.15 centimeters cubed. Okay, so 4 steps to the problem. Give me the formula, substitute in, solve it, and include units. Okay, so those are the 4 things I will always be looking for. Next problem. Again, we're going to be using the density triangle, so I'm going to pop it up top. And this problem says, what is the density? So we're looking for D of a board whose dimensions are, so it's giving us dimensions, so we have a length times a width times a height, and it gives you the mass right there. Okay, so again, first step. The first step, remember, is what's the formula I use? So I cover up density in the triangle, and the formula I'm going to use is D equals M over V. Okay, so there's step 1. Step 2 is to substitute into the formula. So there's my mass. You could calculate the volume, or you could just do this. You could put all the dimensions in you could put the dimensions in parentheses and solve it in a single step on your calculator. So 28,600 divided by 5.4 times 10.6 times 199. The answer to this problem is 2.51, and then the units are grams per cubic centimeter. Okay, so again, remember, formula, substitution, and then the answer with units. Okay.